Hello Internet, my name is Lave and I watched the most anticipated film of the year for me, which is First Man, the third film from director Damien Chazelle, who previously directed Whiplash, which I love, and La La Land, which I also love, and considering I don't normally like musicals, that's a big thing for me. Both films feature music and jazz as a focal point. The question going into this one was he going to be able to transfer that passion, creativity and focus on the characters in the same way in a film which doesn't have music or jazz as a focal point? And yes, he can. Which is a good thing because his latest is a biography with Ryan Gosling starring as Neil Armstrong, the first man to walk on the moon back in 1969. It follows him from his selection and training from a test pilot through the Gemini missions to the Apollo missions that led to the watershed moment in human history when he said those famous words.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
So there was no way I wasn't going to see this one in IMAX, and I'm so glad I did because it puts you right in the cockpit and in the rocket and in the lunar lander for the moon landing itself. It's incredible. This film does for space travel what Dunkirk did for Spitfires. It feels like you're in it in the moment. It's incredible. But as much as this film is an experience of space travel through this guy's eyes, it's first and foremost a deeply personal look at his story, which is tinged with sadness and grief and how he's dealing with it. I mean, it's basically the ultimate expression of someone dealing with grief by doing their work. But Ryan Gosling really does deliver a stellar performance in his portrayal of Neil Armstrong as a man of that generation, and it really chimed with me because my grandparents were of that generation and they simply didn't want to talk about events from World War II, for example, because they simply didn't want to talk about it. That's not to say that they were completely devoid of emotions, they just bottled up their feelings, and Ryan Gosling's performance completely captures that. That's not to say that he's emotionless. I think the emotions run extremely deep in this film. I don't want to give away a big plot detail, but within the first 10 minutes I was welling up in these deeply affecting scenes, and it all builds up to a really powerful ending which had me saying at the end of it, I really hope that's true. I don't know if it is, I don't know if they took creative license with it, but I honestly hope it is true. It's such a solemn, powerful moment. I loved it. Claire Foy is equally brilliant as his wife Janet, who's trying to raise their kids with the knowledge that he might die at any moment, so they will grow up without a father, but also the fact that he won't talk to them about it either. There is a key scene where she forces him to sit down and talk to them about it, which is surely going to be the Oscar nominations clip. They're supported by a terrific cast who all bring their A game, from Chandler to Jason Clarke, who has a small but very pivotal role in the film, and also Corey Stoll, who's playing Buzz Aldrin, who doesn't feature in the film as much as I thought he was going to, and I wonder how the real Buzz Aldrin will think of his treatment of his character, because he says some really insensitive things in some really inappropriate moments, like when accidents happen and people do die, he will say things like, well, I guess I'm in the running to be in command for the next mission now. It's like, oh, right, Buzz, way to kill the mood, bloody hell. All joking aside though, the film has a real sense of threat and danger throughout, and the effect it has on the community of people working on this project, from the astronauts and their families and the technical staff behind the scenes. But it also captures just how pioneering the whole endeavour was. Neil Armstrong's character says at one point in the film that it was only 60 years prior that we as a human species learned to fly, and within that time we're now attempting to land on the moon. It's little lines like that that really put things into context for you. But I also like Damien Chazelle's approach to other tropes that normally annoy me. For example, when you get scenes with lots of exposition, which does sort of happen in this, you get the chalkboard scenes where they're drawing on it, but he avoids that by showing a 1960s infomercial explaining what the Gemini mission is all about, this docking procedure. Nicely done, and it adds to that sense of realism. And like all of the greats, he knows when to use sound and when not to. There's a couple of moments when the sound completely cuts out, and it's just as impactful as the scenes when the cockpits are rumbling and the score is blaring out. I think Damien Chazelle is taking note of the cinematic language of these types of films and using them again in this. I mean, a lot of scenes really reminded me of Apollo 13. They cover similar topics in this, but he definitely puts his own stamp on it. It's so creative and such a visual, stunning masterpiece to look at. It's awesome. Please go and see this in IMAX if you're going to see it. But having said that, I do have a couple of negatives. I mean, they're completely minor, and it might be because I did see it in IMAX, so everything is so big on screen and everything is just enhanced. With that, there were a couple of scenes where I felt the handheld approach maybe wasn't necessary. It's completely necessary in the cockpit sequences where it's all crazy and you're in that environment, but there are scenes where someone might be like walking down a street and it's got that handheld feel to it, and it just was a bit distracting for me. That's all I'm saying. It's very, very minor. And also, going back to the end of the film, there was a moment where I felt it was venturing into cliche territory, but then it all makes complete sense as it goes for this emotional gut punch, which, as I say, if it is true, I want to know if it's true, if he actually did do this thing on the moon. Oh man, it really got to me. It worked so well. So that's my thoughts on First Man, and pause the video if you want to take a closer look at my enjoyment tracker now. It's 3 out of 3 in terms of Damien Chazelle films. I did prefer this one to La La Land, but then as I say, I'm not into musicals. I'm not decided whether I like this one more than Whiplash, but I am more interested in the subject matter of space travel and going to the moon. Not being around in the 60s, I always wondered what it was like when it happened, and this film completely captures what it was like, as well as explaining who Neil Armstrong was as a man. I thought it was wonderful. And when the film finished, I really wanted to do that Dumb and Dumber joke where Jim Carrey sees the news clipping. I wanted to turn to the person sitting next to me and go, "No way, that's great. We've landed on the moon!" So thanks very much for watching this review. I really do appreciate it. If you were on the fence about going to see this one, I hope this review tips you into going to see it. As I say, try and see it in IMAX. It's just awesome. It's like you're actually there and you go to the moon. What's not to love about that? But as I say, thanks very much for watching this review. I really do appreciate it. If you can, give this video a like and don't forget to share the lave.